On today's episode of The Intangibles, we'll be kicking things off as always with the play of the game. At 10 minutes and 25 seconds, we'll answer the question, what's your favorite disc golf hole? And finally, at 19 minutes and 59 seconds, we'll break down Nikko Locastro's 9-month suspension.
All right. Welcome and good evening or good morning or good afternoon to wherever you're at.
Whatever the occasion.
Yeah, whatever day it is when this gets released, because I don't know when that's going to be. Welcome to another wonderful edition of The Intangibles. I am one of your hosts, probably your favorite if I had to guess, Matt. Kenny is joining me again on this lovely Monday evening. Kenny, how are you?
I'm not good right now. I am one of your hosts, probably your favorite, and I'm joined by Kenny.
When I get to run the show, this is how it goes, man.
All right, I'm your guest, Kenny, I guess.
No, you're much more than my guest. You're my brother and my soulmate.
Wow.
And we got another great episode for everybody today. As you may or may not be aware, depending on when you've tuned into this podcast, we are a disc golf podcast now, first and foremost, and we are here to talk about some more disc golf today. So I'm very excited about that. But first, why don't we talk about the play of the game?
Poke chat, poke chat, poke chat, poke chat.
And I'd like you to go first this week, Kenny.
All right, sweet. Yeah, speaking of becoming an all disc golf podcast, I really need to do like my own crappy MS Paint version of Amber's beautiful album art for the podcast, and it's just discs going across instead.
I think we should just go straight to tattoos of that, so Amber can see that and really appreciate what we've done with her artwork.
Yeah, how we've abused it. All right, you're never going to believe where this is going. Play of the game nomination.
Is it disc golf related?
It is. Play of the game goes to Uncle Greg.
Oh, Uncle Greg. All right. Do tell.
So, here's the beginning of the story. Picture it. Sicily.
1909.
2021. So I started playing in 2006 with my first college friends who got me into the sport. I quickly gravitated towards the forehand because I couldn't generate the power on a backhand, and I've specialized in that since. And I gravitated to a particular disc, the Surge, the Flex Surge. I bought one, and I had that disc with me for 15 years, which is kind of hard to fathom. And granted, for a large part of that, I wasn't playing as much as I did in college, but I did play quite a bit. I got 2 aces with that disc, and I finally lost it last summer. Just a stupid little hole in the woods. Bounced off. I knew the general area it was, and I looked for probably 20 minutes and just had no inkling of where it was. So I finally had to order my second FLX Surge, only to discover they don't make them anymore. So that was hard to take. I got one a little more expensive than last time. And then I also recently bought an ESP Surge because it's like, well, I need a similar kind of plastic, and I need a backup plan for whenever I can't get my hand on these Flex Surges anymore. We covered in a previous episode, I had the last Flex Surge. I lost it, got chewed up by a dog from hell. And so now I was left with just my ESP Surge. Well, I was playing a practice round and threw it into a hayfield on a hole that there's no reason I should have, but I just rolled in there. Knew the general area it was, looked for like 20 minutes, a half hour, couldn't find it, and thought, well, damn. And then the very next day, our Uncle Greg cut all that hay down, and I went out there and was like, I know the general area, so maybe it survived, and it did. The disc lived. It has a tiny little crack, didn't affect the flight at all, and I found this disc. I was so pleased. And I was so pleased I had the general idea. But also frustrated because I looked so hard for it, and I know I had to have been just tromping all over it, I'm sure. But yeah, got that disc back, and also, coincidentally, got back a putter that you threw into that same field.
That's what I was going to ask. I assumed that they happened at the same time. So that's what we need to know now, is just like we send Dad out there to mow after we've lost 4 or 5 discs, and we'll get most of them back.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's true. It makes sense. Like if you can't find them, it's because they're down on the ground, so they're not really going to get chewed up, probably. Mm-hmm. But then the very next day, he went through and threshed up the hay, and that could actually, do something to your disc, probably.
Yeah, it is a bit of a miracle that it made it through. Both the discs made it through that with no real wear. I mean, it didn't look like the putter you found had any real.
No, your
scuffs.
putter is perfectly fine. Like I said, mine has a tiny little crack that is just cosmetic damage, basically.
Buried it deep in the tall grass off the tee box number 1.
I didn't. Oh, you did, yeah.
Yeah.
Your putter did. Mine was on hole 11.
Or I guess mine would have been 10, right? It was the island hole
Yes,
that I whipped it way off to the right.
You did 10 and I did 11. So I was doing my Anheuser forehand through the mandatory under the shed and turned it over. Just went straight into the field. Basically, we made the same mistake, just on 2 different holes.
You have to start hiring somebody to fish discs out of traps for us at this course.
Well, we're moving into the nice part of the season on the course that I play on at Mom and Dad's because these fields are going to be gone here in a month or so.
It's very true.
Then much easier to find discs.
Very true. Well, thank goodness for Uncle Greg.
Yeah. How about you? What's your nomination this week?
So I am also disc golf adjacent, and by adjacent, I mean right on top of. I'm giving the play of the game this week to my lovely wife, Veronica. On Sunday, after our daughter, Addie, woke up from her first nap, Veronica said, hey, why don't we just go to the park, and Addie and I will play on the playground, and you can just go play around a disc golf, and then, if she's still happy to hang around, we'll hang out for a little bit, and then we'll go home. So it basically took it upon herself to plan me going out and playing at our local course, which is lovely. I played. There's not very many people out, so I got to play a couple discs per hole and try out some different lines and different shots. I did lose a disc while I was out there. I threw one of my distance drivers that I don't use very much on a forehand line on number 3. If you remember number 3, it's a forehand favorable for a right-hand thrower.
Third forehand in a row, right?
Basically. So the very first one, it's straight away. You can do whatever you want.
I guess that's true.
The next 2 kind of curl off to your right. Yep. And so this is the one that goes over that little creek.
Right.
And there's a little bit of hazard kind of to your right. So it ended up in that right area somewhere. And I think it was a pretty good shot overall, but I just couldn't locate it by the time I got up there.
It's like pasture land is what that hazard is.
Yeah, exactly. Tall grass, shrubbery, some little trees and stuff. But anyway, it was a lot of fun. It was a great use of my time. I was going to be throwing discs that day anyway, so it was nice to go to the actual course and play.
That's very nice. That's very nice of Veronica to make that happen for you. What a nice gift.
Mm-hmm. So thank you, Veronica.
I was going to say, too, I don't know if you've had this experience. I've lost, like I said, I didn't lose my first disc, really, for 15 years. And I think it's just a function of I'm just playing a lot more disc golf than I did once upon a time. And I did play a ton in college, but it was on a course where you just almost couldn't lose discs.
Yeah. I almost made the joke when you mentioned that you had it for 15 years that you clearly weren't playing enough disc golf during that time, but I held it in.
I appreciate that. I'm playing more now, like playing almost every day, which is absurd, compared to what I used to. Even in college where, your responsibilities aren't as intense. We would play a couple times a week, maybe. On the weekend you might go out a couple times, maybe once during the week.
Right.
But I'm playing quite a bit more than that at this point.
Don't let my smack talk fool you or anybody. I lose putters in the yard constantly. Like, I have 10 putters I throw, and I come in with 8 every night, and they're a different 8, So you can lose them all over the place. You don't have to be anywhere interesting.
It's very true.
Yeah.
And you can lose them without any hazards at all. Mm-hmm. Like, those are the most frustrating ones, where it's like, it's just out here in the open somewhere.
I clearly didn't see it slide somewhere where now it's, like, shaded just the right way. I've sworn off buying any discs that are, like, forest green or forest brown colored. Like, there's just no reason to not get a white or a yellow, something bright.
So Seth only buys white discs, and I think that's part of the reason.
Yeah, it makes total sense.
Well, good nominations. I can't wait for someone out there to decide who wins.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the one Twitter user to choose the winner.
Think about how much power you have as a listener. If you're listening, you can single-handedly... No vote you make matters more than this one.
All right, and onwards and upwards. Today, for our middle segment, we're going to do an FAQ, a frequently asked question. And I like this one. It's nice and simple. I think it's more telling of us as players and where we're from, probably, than anything. But I posed the question, what is your favorite hole of disc golf? And that could be... So I took this... It could be a hole you've played. It also could be, an iconic hole that you've watched and that you just, when you think of disc golf, you think of that.
It's a great question. I went with the one I have played, my personal favorite to experience. And probably if you asked me again next year, after watching a couple full seasons of pro play, I might be able to tell you, oh man, I always look forward to this hole on this course. But right now, I don't know that I have a great answer for that. There are lots of holes that I think are cool, but I don't have... So far, I think when I start watching next year, and I'm like, oh yeah, this one is cool, then I'll know. But I went with hole number 8 in Effingham Disc Golf Course, Illinois.
Which one is hole number 8?
So, okay. So, first let me back up for the listener. So, I started playing at U of I on a dinky little 9-hole, like I said, straight throws, barely any obstacles. It's a great learning course that I was on. And then over the summer, we were like, I got you into the game. And I was like, we should go check out, there's a course in Effingham, apparently, I didn't even know. And we checked it out. It's an 18-hole course, and I love that course so much. If you go look at the reviews, it's basically people saying, like, it's a pretty easy course, but it's interesting, and it's up and down hills, and, like, there's lots of good stuff. For me, as, like, a recreational player with no aspirations of any, like, I don't want to join a league particularly, at least at this point, it's perfect. It's, like, just the right amount of challenge for me. And it has variable distances, interesting shots. Hole number 8, this is all up and down hills in a park. Woods all around. Hole number 8, you are throwing way downhill. So this is downhill, the basket's off a little bit to the right, so it favors a forehand, but there's totally a viable backhand look as well, with a road that runs through the park. There's not a lot in your way, so you can just feel massive with your throw. It's so downhill that you just feel like a god when you release it. There are some things to think about. There's a massive tree off to the left, which is the big thing contesting your forehand throw. And there is a tree line / creek running all the way on the left side, and the landing zone at the basket narrows up as you get to it. So it's not a freebie by any means, but it's just so fun to watch your flights on this hole. And when you get the birdie on this, it's a par 3. When you get the birdie, you do feel like a beast, because, as far as how far your disc traveled, it traveled hundreds of feet. Can I throw hundreds of feet? No. Well, I guess I can throw hundreds of feet, barely.
A couple of hundreds of feet, right?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, you throw so far. I don't know. It's just a really fun hole to play. And it's not just like I said, it's not just a gimme either. So that's my vote for my favorite one. It's the one I always look forward to the most.
So I love this answer. Because I picked the exact same hole. And
oh!
I did. So for holes that I've played in my life, that one is great. And I echo everything you said about the course. I think it's not going to be like some Silver Series tournament course for the tour by any means. But it mixes in wooded with wide open. It mixes in uphill and downhill. It makes you throw, forehand and backhand or that curvature. It actually is a really good, well-rounded course to learn the game on.
I'd love to go back, especially now, because the course does have mandatories and out of bounds that we never played when we were learning. I would love to go back and play it legit and actually do the mandos, the out of bounds, and all of that stuff.
See how hard it really, really is.
Yeah, for sure.
But I love it for all the same reasons. And I I picked another course or another hole that's on a famous course as part of this, just thinking of like holes in my head that are like iconic for disc golf. And it shares this, that they both have a tee box that's elevated. And like you said, it does give it that feeling when you're throwing, and even that look when you throw of just huge distance, like it's a par 3 and looking at the basket from where you're at, you just don't think you should be able to get there. And then being able to put one out there that floats all the way down there is just really cool. You can also end up hundreds of feet away from the basket because of how much distance you have between you. But
absolutely,
that's part of the fun. So I picked that for when I played, and then the one I picked for like iconic disc golf holes is called On Top of the World, and it's at the De La Viega disc golf course. Have you watched any tournaments that are there? I was going to say, I don't think there have been any there this year. The course in general is awesome. This hole, I want to say, is a 600-foot long par 3, but the tee pad is like 100 or 130 feet above where the actual basket is. So when you watch the pros play this, you're watching people basically just chuck these giant hyzers way out there, hoping they're going to come down somewhere close. And there's people who will ace run this, get close to hitting it in the basket at 600 feet. There's people who end up all over the place. And like I said, I like it for the same reasons as I like hole number 8 at Effingham. It's just a grandeur to it being that high up.
Yeah, totally. I don't know for sure what my answer is going to be, like I said, coming into next year. I have a hunch that it's going to be something at the Preserve, just because there were so many holes I enjoyed. Like I think that's my favorite course I've watched so far in the tournaments I've seen. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's going to be something there. And, the people who own and take care of that course, like, just love it so much. It's their baby. So it's only going to get better, too.
I definitely agree with that. I thought of number 1 at the Preserve, which is just, the way it's designed, it forces you to throw a good long tee shot. Now you got to go over water to your, not really island, but kind of isolated green. Like, yeah, I do think the design of that course is awesome.
I wondered if we were both going to pick that hole, so I'm actually really pleased that we both did. It just makes me want to go play Effingham now.
We definitely should. It's probably the course I've played the most out of any actual course I've been to, which I'm sure is a big factor in this too. But I do still think it was... I can go through my head all of the holes still, and there's a lot in there that are super interesting.
I like the 9-hole near your place, but it's pretty repetitive, Mm-hmm. I like in where I used to live. There's a park that had 3 different courses with multiple layouts. And actually, I just recently played there again. So after I visited you and Veronica, I swung by my old stomping ground and played 18. And they do a great job on that. Like, they updated all the signage, all the tees, all the baskets, all the basket locations. They're doing landscaping and stuff. Every time I go, it's nicer. And it's just the community. It's not the parks department. And it's really cool. I do love it, but, I don't know. It probably is just nostalgia of the Effingham course. I just think it's so nice.
We should... That'll have to be a future episode. We'll go play, and then we can talk about it. Talk about how we remembered it versus how it was. Talk about how we played versus what we expected.
Definitely. There's also... I've played this course several times now. In Robinson, they have a little 9-hole, but apparently they're adding... alternate tee locations, and they're like doing landscaping in the woods and stuff. Sounds pretty cool.
Interesting. Well, sounds like there's lots to check out by you. And then we'll do a Canyons episode up here and really get our dicks punched in.
That would be awesome, honestly.
Yeah, we'll do it. We'll make it happen. Anyway, now for a word from our sponsors.
Do you love watching movies? Do you hate watching movies? Boy, oh boy, do I have the show for you. On Watching Movies, April and Kenny watch movies. Instant classics like Pride and Prejudice and The Mummy. Despicable gutter trash like Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Divisive, controversial picks like 2001, A Space Odyssey. Each month our hosts discuss and analyze a movie, then put out a watch-along commentary track, enticing. Whether you like watching movies or hate watching movies, you'll love Watching Movies with April and Kenny. Now streaming on your favorite platform.
Oh, let's break it down! you so angry?
All right, and we're back. Ah, man. Today's main topic, Kenny. I'm excited about it and also exhausted of it, I think.
Yeah, it's a good way to say it.
Yeah, I've heard less and less talk about it in the actual disc golf scene, which I think is a good thing. We'll see how that continues. So, we already talked about Nikko and the incident that occurred at the European Open. An incident of a player, Nikko, getting upset and a little emotionally out of control and essentially not really starting a fight, but kind of looking like he was going to start a fight with an official for the tournament.
Yeah, just as a recap, if you didn't listen to our last episode, at the European Open, Nikko, an American player who's famous for calling other players out on things and also throwing temper tantrums and taking too long for his shots. He got called by an official for going too long. He then proceeded to get within 6 inches of the official's face, telling him to back the F off, step away, and in general acting like a little shit, and continued apparently to follow the official. After the round was done, was still following him. And yeah, so the immediate aftermath of that was he was kicked out of the tournament. And he lost some sponsors, including one run by a family member.
I think they since walked that back even, regardless.
Gotcha. But then he said, I'm gonna step away for a bit and from playing professional disc golf.
Yep.
So that was where we left it.
Yep. And of course in the background the PDGA was determining what his punishment would be for this offense. So I guess first we should start with what the punishment ended up being. So they treated this as a Class A offense.
The most serious level of offense.
Yep, and just to go through the verbiage here, because I think it's worth it. Class A offenses are the most serious category and generally involve actual harm to other players. There's a lot of other stuff they put in the middle here. But one thing I think is important to pick out of it is intimidation is among potential Class A offenses, which is really what they're pulling out of this Class A section and what they're punishing him for, in my opinion at least. So Class A offense carries a standard 24-month suspension with 12 months of probation. That's the standard punishment with what they gave him. And they actually got together as a committee and gave him a reduced suspension. They gave him a 9-month suspension with a 15-month probation, so a slightly extended probation period.
A much shorter suspension period.
Yeah. So I'll ask this question to start. What do you think of the punishment? Do you think it's fair, unfair, enough, not enough, too much?
In my opinion, the punishment fits the crime. As we said last time, Nikko himself was like, I'm going to step away from the sport. So I think, one, the PDGA just lining up and saying yep, you're going to step away for a little bit and think about what you're doing. For me personally, it fits and it makes sense, especially because, this thing that he did, it doesn't exist in a vacuum. It doesn't exist in a bubble. It's not like this is the first time that Nikko's flown off the handle. So I think that's fair. To go back to the language they have for Class A offenses, the other examples they have of things that can fall into this category are physical battery, sexual assault, credible threats of imminent harm to another player, and stalking. So, pretty serious stuff, and intimidation is definitely at the bottom end of those other offenses that fall into Class A. So I get why they dialed it back from 24. If he punched somebody, I would be ban this guy. Just ban him from the sport. So him getting in somebody's face, I think it's on the books. They dialed it back less than half of what they could have gone for under their own language. So to me, it seems fair. And they even say here, mitigating factors may lead them to consider lesser penalties. In this case, the mitigating factors are, it was vague threats. He's just getting in his face. It's the heat of the moment. It's his first offense that's actually been punished like this. I buy it personally. What do you think of the 9-month suspension?
I think it's great. I honestly do. I agree with everything you've said. I think an important thing to keep in mind for all of this too is that as part of what happened, and how the PDGA kind of lines stuff out in their handbook, Nikko has a responsibility to like interact with the PDGA at the event after this happens, and he can basically tell the story from his side, kind of talk to them about what happened, help to start dealing with it right away. And he actually refused to cooperate.
I always forget about this aspect of it, and I don't even think we talked about it last time. But yeah, he just refused to talk to the PDGA afterwards.
He was just still being a stubborn, hot-headed jackass after he already did the thing wrong. And I think them reducing his punishment, but still enforcing something strong like this is great for, again, like, they put a lot of stuff into this category, and he didn't beat somebody up, and he didn't, threaten to assault somebody. And, I mean, that's great that he didn't do that, but he still did something wrong. He did something that he's known to have done in the past, and there needs to be some sort of precedent set that other players can't do this. I think that's important, too, and 9 months is a long time when it comes down to it. Like, he's going to miss some of the early tournaments next season because of this, but I think that that's fair. I think that he needs to be shown that he can't do this, or he's going to do it in another tournament. And the probation on top of all this is a great thing too. Like, that's going to keep him, hopefully, when he does come back, to continue to think about it and to continue to care about it. Otherwise, he's going to get in. He probably will get banned if he does something else in that time period.
I think it's brilliant. I love the long probation period, where it's like he's going to have to be just thinking about this every tournament and be like, I can't step out of line here. Which, good. I hope he cools down. I hope he learns how to be a reasonable person playing disc golf.
So we talked a little bit about how we feel about it. One of the first things that I read not too long after the suspension came out was Paul McBeth's kind of response to it. I don't know if you read the full...
No, I've got it.
The full Insta story, but the gist of what he said was basically like...
I don't mind reading the whole thing for our listeners.
Do you have it up? Do you want to read it?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so this is, like you said, this is on Instagram stories, just big text walls, basically. This won't take too long, so don't fret.
Bear with us. It's worth it.
Yeah. So I'll read through it, and then we can go back through it and pick out the pieces that we're interested in talking about. So Paul says, via Instagram stories, 9 months for a first-time offender? I understand the situation could have been handled differently, but to claim intimidation as the offense seems off to me. The official doesn't step back. Now he's talking about the incident. The official doesn't step back like someone who's intimidated. He also stares the player down instead of trying to defuse the situation. Professional officials should know the player's stress levels are elevated while competing in all sports, so why instigate the issue? I hope Nikko appeals the situation. From what I saw, it's a Class C at most. He ats the PDGA. I'm obviously going to get a lot of messages on my take, but here's my reasons. 1. The official makes the call on 30 seconds, taking too long to throw. Nikko asked why on 3 occasions, then gets an answer to all 3. 2. Nikko says, step away from me. The official takes a half step back. 3. Nikko walks back to his bag and the official stares him down the whole time. 4. Nikko confronts the official for staring him down, not for the call. Then finally, the fact that he's suspended for Class A intimidation seems off to me. That is all. So lots of people had opinions on the Paul McBeth take on this situation. What do you think of his overall thing?
I think it's shameful to shift the blame onto the officiant in any way at all. Like, I think that is just unacceptable in my mind. To somehow turn this into, well, the official was staring at Nikko. Like, fuck that. The official was there in the first place because there was already time issues with the card. That's the only reason he was there. Nikko knew why he was there. Nikko knew why he got called. So blaming the official for not explaining it after Nikko, like an aggressive asshole, says why, like it's baloney. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's okay.
It's a pretty simple explanation.
Yeah, and I think to somehow put this on the official and make it like his fault for not being a prince of conflict management and like crisis intervention, like that's not what he's there for.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, go ahead.
I kind of have two thoughts with that. One, I don't personally know what the PDGA, like, because he's a PDGA official, right?
He's actually pretty high up, I think, in the organization, and he's there helping be part of the event, make sure it gets ran well. Yeah.
So I don't know what their policy is for their officials. Like, for all I know, they have some code of conduct where it's very stringent, like, de-escalate, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. Like, the issue here is Nikko's behavior that we're talking about, not the officials. So the official failed to de-escalate. Okay, maybe he gets some punishment from the PDGA officials, whatever governing body there is for him. I personally don't think he did anything wrong, but I don't know what their rules are. That doesn't change anything about what Nikko did in the situation.
Yep. And I don't think there is any sort of rules or organization there, because when you get back to it, this is a self-officiated event.
Right.
Like, at the end of the day, again, that official is only there because there were already problems with the card. And presumably someone on the card complained about Nikko's taking too much time. And I think that's a whole nother discussion, right? Like, there will be people who will complain about the fact that there's not an official officiating rule book and official people who do it and like red cards and all that shit, and
which I'm sympathetic to.
Yep, I totally understand that, and I think like there's nothing we can really do about that at this stage, I guess is what I'll say. And there is a governing body to the organization, and there are rules lined out about how you can interact with people on the disc golf course, and Nikko did still cross lines with what he did. So
yeah, definitely.
I think the other thing from Paul's response, and I've read about, so Paul actually had a response about Bradley Williams' suspension several years ago too, and I think it sheds a lot more light on where he's coming from in this stuff. But his comments were this. The issue I have is when a rule is broken or a mistake is made and our governing body issues a punishment but provides no explanation to its professional members. My security as a player feels threatened. This is my livelihood as well as many others, and we shouldn't have to wonder what may happen if we make a mistake. So I get where he's coming from there. I understand the fear of an unknown, basically, like, reply coming from them towards whatever might happen. But I also think that, like, yes, this is your livelihood, but it also doesn't mean that you should be able to treat other people like crap and get away with it. Does that make sense?
It does. So my read on that, because I also saw, historically, Paul McBeth has been very much like, when something goes on, a player steps out of line, gets called out on something, gets some sort of punishment or penalty, he's always on the player's side. I totally get that. I think Paul and other players, what they need to do is get together and have a players union. Like, that's what this is.
Yep.
He's basically like, we need to have some security, we need to know what the rules are. Like, I totally agree.
I think that's what he truly wants. Yep, I agree with you. And I think I could see him being a champion of that if the sport continues to grow, and that's something that, makes sense.
He seems to want to. And, maybe, like, I can see it from his perspective. Obviously, he's still at the top of his game. But someday, he's going to be winding down, like, not being at the top of the competitive pile. That's an interesting, like, career direction for him, to keep touring and be like, I will be the player union guy.
Yeah.
I get that totally. Like, and he's basically talking, like, I read all this and it feels like a lawyer for the Players Association.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no reasonable person would think this, but it is an argument you would make if you're a lawyer defending what Nikko did.
And if you think about Paul McBeth, of all people playing the game, like, do you think he's someone who's at risk for being punished for something like this? Like, I've never seen him lose his shit like this. Definitely not towards a player or official or anybody else. Like, I've seen him get frustrated playing the game, like a reasonable person does. But I would never expect him to be in this position that he's defending.
He's not going to be. Like, most of the time he's a Terminator when he's playing. Just no emotion or reactions. And occasionally he does get, like, a little frustrated himself. Like, that's his, like, most fiery when he's on the course. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, he's not saying this because he's not really worried about his own stuff, I don't think.
Yep, I agree. Did you happen to see, or read, I should say, the UltiWorld Disc Golf article about this punishment?
I don't believe I did.
Okay. It's They are like a disc golf publication, and they wrote this whole thing about how it was an unjust punishment, and kind of the whole crux, their whole justification for it was that if you look at other professional leagues and the punishments associated with, you know, similar things or worse things, they get punished less, basically. And I think what that really did a good job of showing was how unfairly the world treats people who are famous and popular more than anything, is what I would say. Like, when you look at baseball players and basketball players and football players who are professionals, they can just get away with shit basically because they have money and people like them, and like, yeah, so you beat the shit out of somebody, you get a 2-game suspension, and you're back making millions of dollars the following week. Like, it basically...
Somebody superior to you says something to you, makes a call that you don't like, you get in their face and scream. Like, we all have stressful jobs. If you do that to your manager, you are fired.
Right. Yep. Yeah, and so and part of this guy's argument too is that, like, well, these people have niche skills, and so if they can't do it here, they can't do it anywhere. And I don't have any sympathy, I guess, when it comes down to it for that kind of shit. Like, yes, you're right. You are in a privileged position, and you should take it more seriously because of that. And, like, just do the simple things that make you a good person and make you not get suspended from your profession for 9 months, you know?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, totally. It's like when Serena Williams threatened to shove a tennis ball down a line judge's throat. It's like, I think she should have been banned from the game.
I think
sorry.
I really like that the PDGA did give an actual substantial penalty to somebody for being an asshole, and I think that should continue. I don't think you should be able to get away with, like, screaming at and being a dick to anybody while you're on the tour. Frankly, like,
yeah, does come down a little bit to our personal taste. Because a big part of the conversation that's evolved from here is, like, what do we want this sport to be? Not just like you and me, but like as a community,
the average fan,
as a sport, what do we want it to be? Because you have hockey where literally punching people in the face is just part of the game. Like, you can just do that and that's fine.
Yeah.
And then if you do that in football, you're looking at at least a multi-game suspension. You know, if you do that in golf, they'd probably kick you off the tour, Doug. Like, you know what I mean? Like, every sport's a little bit different on how they feel. My personal taste, I don't think it's cool anywhere. I don't know how it gets normalized in any sport. Like, you just don't get to do that. And Paul saying people get heated. Yes, I have had work situations in my past where I've been heated too. I don't get to scream at people.
Yeah.
And I would think that if somebody did scream at me, yeah, there needs to be consequences, real consequences.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm fully with you on that.
You shouldn't. Yeah. You shouldn't be able to treat people like that with no repercussions, or it's going to reinforce that you can do that, and you're going to keep doing it. Right.
Right.
I mean,
right. I wanted to come back to Paul's take a little bit more because there's a few other things I wanted to call out.
Yeah, let's hear it.
He says the official doesn't step back like someone who's intimidated. And lots of commenters pointed this out, and I just want to underline it too. The fact that Nico's like failed to intimidate him with his little like
doesn't mean
tirade.
He didn't try.
Right, exactly. Like, he attempted to intimidate an official, and the official was not super impressed.
That's also like a weird kind of like victim, not even blaming thing. It's like the opposite. It's like, oh well, he wasn't even scared, so like it didn't happen. Basically,
it means he's not intimidating, I guess. Although I've heard lots of people, I don't know how true this is, say that like people are scared of like playing with Nikko just because it's like you just can't say anything. He's gonna pop off on you. You don't want him, and it's like. Yeah, I could see that. It would definitely throw you off your game, whether or not you're intimidated by him.
I also think it's funny to try to interpret how you would feel or act in that situation, where it's like somebody's being aggressive towards you. Maybe that's never happened in your life. Like, I don't know. It feels disingenuous to be like, that guy didn't behave the right way.
Right. And speaking of disingenuous, again, to Paul McBeth's sake, he says the official like doesn't step back, and then literally later he says the official takes a half a step back. It's like, so what are you saying here? I don't know. And then he keeps looking at Nikko. Yeah, of course. Like,
I wouldn't want to look away.
This guy just got right in your face and said, "Walk away."
Well,
what are you going to do?
Yeah, he's watching him as he does walk away because he's afraid he's going to like come jump him or something. You know, like.
Yep. So yeah, I just think it's a really bad take, and he's been, I think, properly called out roundly by the rest of the disc golf community. I don't think anybody really likes Paul McBeth's take on this. I haven't seen anybody be like, yeah, Paul McBeth, that's right. And maybe that's just down to the fact that we all hate Nikko.
I don't even hate Nikko. So did you read his apology / post suspension notice note?
So the first note I took was of his apology. This was before the suspension. He posted this, I think, also on Instagram, potentially, just a video.
Oh, yeah.
It's the most lukewarm apology I've ever heard in my life. So he basically says he doesn't want anyone to see him in the light that he put himself in.
I'm sorry you saw me do that. That's
it's like, I don't want anybody to see me doing that. I don't want anybody to think that I would do that. It's like, it's not. He literally says it's not a good look for me. It's like, it's not about it being a good or bad look. You need to recognize the harm that you did, show that you're sorry about it, and show what you're going to do going forward. But even in his apology, he's like, man, I don't want people to think that I would do that, even though I did. I don't want people to have a bad opinion of me. It's like, that's not it.
It's good that you don't want that, but you're not actually trying to do the things and change the things that you need to do that. It makes me think, did you ever watch Tiger King on Netflix, the Joe Exotic show?
I did not.
So there's a thing that happens where I think a tiger mauls one of his workers, and he's doing, he's got a guy who's recording video footage for him as part of this deal, and so they have footage of this. He comes into his office and he says, I am never going to financially recover from this. His first thought is, I'm never going to financially recover from this person's arm being eaten off of them. Right. And that's Nikko, basically. He's like, oh man, I am so sorry that this happened to me and that I am not going to be making money and I'm going to have a harder time. He hasn't really apologized for anything that he's done when it comes down to it. If you read anything he's posted, if you look at any of the videos he's posted, so I will be impressed if when he does come back in 9 months, if he is, a changed man or not.
I mean, best case scenario, he's not a changed man, but he just knows to keep it in his fucking pants,
Yeah. Well, and you know what?
He realizes I lost sponsors and 9 months of my career. So, and I have 15 months of probation. I just need to chill out, I guess.
Maybe it'll get him on some lead cards, because I haven't seen him on any recently.
Oh, shit. Nikko Locastro, more like.
Oh, man. What if he's listening to this podcast when it comes out, because he's looking for his name anywhere out there?
That would be the best thing that could happen to our podcast. If he retweets us and says, fuck these guys,
let's go.
Our listenership would just skyrocket. So literally don't care if that happens. And I stand by what I'm saying.
We're begging you to do it, Nikko. We really are. And you know what? If you'd like to come have an interview and talk about everything that's happened, we would love to do that. So just hit us up.
Oh, man. And also, I would like a gold pony, as long as I'm still wishing for things.
And to hit an ace tomorrow when I throw in the yard.
Yeah.
Oh, one final thing. Go ahead.
Oh, I also had one final thing. You go first.
Well, my final thing is stupid and quick. We talked about finding discs early in the episode. I've been thrown in my yard. We talked about losing discs and whatnot. I threw one of my Star Mako 3s. I've got 2 of them, Orange Boys. And I lost it the other night. No idea where it ended up. And today, when I had a little break in work, I was out throwing for 20 or 30 minutes, and I walked back up towards the house, and the sun was just right, and I could see it shining, stuck in the middle of a rose bush by the house. So I found it. It's beautiful. It's good to go. Threw it a few times. Still feels great.
What a picturesque way to find your disc. Yeah. Like a sunbeam in a rose bush.
I think I've still got 3 or 4 judges in various places in the yard, so hopefully I'll find those.
You've got one in my house right now.
I got a lot of judges.
All right, my last thing, which is I don't think will be, well, I mean, depends how much we want to talk about it, is the Paul McBeth Brody Smith beef.
Oh.
I don't know if you've been following this.
Yeah, it was hard to find any sort of real info about it, but Brody did recently talk about it a little bit, is my understanding.
Yes. So I only found out about it because I was researching to get ready for this.
Yeah, and Brody came at him on Twitter, I think, for his take on...
So I didn't know that. I don't follow him on Twitter. But on Foundation Podcasts, which is the company that he co-owns, they were talking about he came out like, I forget what the thumbnail is. It's a great thumbnail because it totally baited me into watching this video, and I enjoyed it. Where he's like, Brody apologizes for his actions, and I was like, what did Brodie Smith do? I don't know what this is about. So, as you say, it's a Twitter thing that started it. Paul McBeth posted on Instagram, and I think on Instagram and on Twitter, Brodie Smith came out, and he said, quote, "Just saw the screenshot of Paul McBeth's take. Gotta say that's a pretty bad take, Paul."
Yep, I'm on Team Brody.
Yeah, I think most people agree. Most people agree it is a bad take, and that's pretty tame as far as like a thing to say to somebody.
I agree.
Basically saying,
I agree.
I disagree with you, and wasn't trying to dunk on him. Wasn't trying to say you're full of shit. Just like, it's a bad take. I don't like the take here. All I have currently is Brodie's side of things.
Oh, you don't have.
So he came on.
You don't have Paul's retweet, or not retweet, his tweet back.
Yes. So Paul says. So basically, what happened after that is somebody said, "Why are you?" Because he didn't tag Paul in this tweet, and somebody said, "Why not tag him?" And like,
and he said
confront
he's blocked, right?
And he says, "I haven't blocked." And Paul also hasn't blocked. Paul says he has me blocked, but I hope he stays on. In Discraft, he's saying. I hope he stays, because they're both Discraft players. I like the fact that he has to throw discs with my name on it. And I like the follow-ups, too, because some rando said, "This Paul I like a lot." And then Brodie Smith replied and said, "I like it." So there's some bad blood here. And do you know anything about any of this?
So I know of one firm reason for the bad blood. So Foundation Disc Golf is based in, I want to say, one of the Carolinas, Virginia. Yeah, East Coast. And Brody was, I don't know if he was West Coast or where he was, but he was somewhere else.
He was in Texas.
There you go.
He was in some big town in Texas. I think Dallas is where he's from originally.
So if you have followed disc golf much in the past couple of years, Brody kind of transitioned from ultimate frisbee towards disc golf, and him and Paul McBeth kind of got together and did a lot of videos together, a lot of YouTube stuff where it was like Brody training in disc golf, trying out different discs, playing practice rounds, him and Paul hanging out doing stuff. And so they had this relationship that I think started in that space. And Paul was
it's like a mutually beneficial thing. They both have big audiences by themselves.
Yep.
And they're both bringing these big audiences together, and it does cause a stir.
Yep.
I was like, when Brody went to disc golf, I was like, holy moly, because I already knew of him from his trick shot days and his ultimate days.
See, that's so I had no idea who the fuck he was until disc golf. I went backwards and you went forwards.
Yeah.
It's like we lived through Tenet. Have you watched Tenet?
No, it's a palindrome.
It's not very good, but it's just like that. Anyway, winding it back. So they got started in this business relationship, and Paul, I think, was involved with Foundation Disc Golf in Virginia already. Brody then is kind of talking to Paul about this and gets involved with it. He gets invested into it. And he makes the decision to move to Virginia to be at the Foundation headquarters, to be there with Paul, to continue to be part of that whole thing and to grow it and to make it bigger and better and make money off of it. And shortly... go ahead.
An important part of this moving, it's not just Brody moving to Virginia. It's Brody with his wife, and I think he has triplet babies right now.
I have no idea about the kids. I only watch for disc golf, so...
So this is on the podcast. He has triplet young babies right now.
Wow, I had no idea.
So uprooted the whole family.
Oh, Brody has triplets.
Yes, Brody has triplets.
Oh, shit. Okay, I still didn't know that.
Uprooted the family from, urban center Texas, like heart of disc golf in the South, to, Timbuktu, Virginia, like just little small town Virginia, basically, hanging it on this business venture. Again, this is what I've heard from Brody in this podcast.
Yep. And so his idea of this commitment, I guess, was much... He was more committed to it than Paul, because shortly after moving, basically Paul and his wife, Hannah, moved to Florida, and actually I think are no longer part of Foundation even at this point. So there's basically a falling out sometime after Brody and his family moved. Seems like Paul wanted out, they left, and so there's bad blood because of that. There's something else he alluded to in that video of some sort of, I don't know what going on that Paul knew about but didn't say he knew. Yeah, I don't really know what was implied there. Sounds like a very personal thing, obviously, with the cryptic way of talking about it. Regardless of that, I think I would be pissed if I was in Brodie's shoes and that actually happened, you know?
Well, and Brody also, I think it's important, like, the way he presented it, he's like, if this were just a business thing, like, if I were just to be approached by, Crazy Laser Disc Golf Company, and I made a deal with them and moved out there, and they pulled the rug out from under me, I'd be pissed and I'd be mad. But it's different when it's somebody you thought was your friend, that you thought you had this friendly relationship with. It's only his side of the story, but, I mean, yeah, I get it.
and I think unless Paul ever responds in any sort of sincere way, then we're only going to know that side, right? So, and I honestly think that's the way it's going to stay. I don't really see any reason for him to respond at this point.
My big take, I mean, this is always, like, the ultimate, like, final statement on any internet drama like this. We don't know the whole story, and we never will.
Yep.
Like, unless it goes to court. We won't really know the whole story. And even then, we won't know the whole story,
right.
Yeah,
I mean, I hope if they were friends, or if they are friends on some level still, that they're able to figure that out, I think that's a shame if they were buddies and then it ended for whatever reason, so.
Yeah. I do think this is honestly what makes the Nikko suspension feel so virtuous, though. There's, like, ample video evidence. It's like, you don't have to feel bad about this suspension on Nikko.
I agree with that. So, I read about Bradley Williams' suspension. Do you want to know a little more detail about that? I know we're at the end of our episode here, but...
no, we can keep going for another hour or so.
We are pretty... I mean, we're not even to an hour yet, so it's pretty short. So what happened, apparently, was... So he was a hothead in general. He was kind of known in a similar way as Nikko at the time for being just, if he was having a bad time, you would know about it. Like, he was very expressive on the course. He kicked a temporary basket over, which is why he was on probation in the first place before he actually got suspended. He was so mad that he literally kicked a basket over during a round. But the reason he got suspended was that there was another tournament he was in, and essentially he bumped shoulders with another player, like, on the tee pad. And there's there's no video evidence of this. There's a lot of, he said kind of stuff around this.
Right.
The person who it happened to had to have submitted a formal complaint because of it, and it had to have been substantiated enough by the people around that they decided to go through with the suspension. But I can only imagine if you had video evidence of whatever that interaction was. Because from Bradley Williams' recount of it, it's basically he's frustrated with his round. He's not even paying attention. He accidentally bumps into somebody, and then he walks away. And that's the whole thing. And obviously somebody else, their interpretation was, I just got, aggressively shouldered by somebody, and I feel the need to report this. So... I think
I believe victims, personally.
I do too. And I find it, where there's smoke, there's fire. Somebody who's previously been known for this stuff. Like, I do think that's why it's important to then show some sort of firm stance on something like that. To show them, even if this isn't 100% true, you're doing enough that you're causing problems for yourself and you need to back that behavior off, whatever it is.
Totally agree. I have one last thing. I forgot I had one last coda for this entire thing. The last thing I found in my research for this episode that I want to share with you is a video. It is called, and we'll just watch a little bit of it. The audience, you can go watch it on your own, and we'll get Matt's reaction. It's called, Does Nikko Locastro Actually Take Too Much Time?
Ooh.
I just love he misses on these examples, too. Okay. That's what I wanted to show.
I think it is an interesting thing. When I looked at this a little bit, and I watched a couple of videos that were right at 30 seconds, or even a little past it, that felt like 30 seconds wasn't long enough. And I think that could be a discussion point later. I don't necessarily think the rule is super sharp or really good for every single situation. He clearly takes more time than is needed.
Yeah, the thing I love about this video, one is just watching like the few clips that are sped up and just watching him pump fake like 20 times. It's like, what is this doing for you? I just don't understand it all. Mm-hmm. But the other thing I like about this video is I clicked on it because I saw this video. Does Nikko Locastro actually take too much time? ? And I was like, this is a Nikko fanboy who wants to show that he doesn't actually take too much time. And the guy who made the video actually says, I wanted to make this video to kind of debunk and show that people are overreacting and that he doesn't take too much time. And he's like, I just had to come to terms with, no, he just does routinely take twice as much time as you're allowed.
Oh, man.
So anyway, overall thoughts, 9-month suspension, 15-month probation, good.
Mm-hmm.
Paul Macbeth take, not very good.
Mm-hmm.
Brody, calling him out, good.
Yeah.
The beef, we'll have to wait and see.
I'll be interested to see if it's really beef or not. I have seen them on cards together a couple times this year, I want to say, and they've seemed to be, not best of buds by any means, but they can handle it. So
they're collegiate.
Yeah, they're professionals, I guess, at the end of the day, and they're able to carry through that. So
I think that makes sense. Yeah. Like when they're both out there, like they're not like Nikko. They just play the game. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I think we should have as a topic for a future episode. There are some people who like the drama and spice and have the opinion that drama in sports is good. We should tackle that in general and with disc golf in particular. And I think that would be an interesting topic.
Sounds great to me. Yeah, there's definitely been a lot of people talking about it recently. So let's do it.
All
right, everybody. Thanks for listening.
We love you. Stay safe.
Stay safe and stay loved.